We are back with another Emmy Slugfest. I'm joined by Luca Giliberti and Zach Laws. This one is going to be all about the comedy acting categories, the four main lead and supporting races. So I'll start with you, Zach. I want to ask you, you don't have Lily Tomlin or Allison Janney or Jane Fonda in your predictions. You've got more of a fresh, exciting lineup. All three of us have Julia Louis-Dreyfus, of course, Rachel Brosnahan, who won last year, and Natasha Lyonne. And for your other slots, you're going with fresher faces. So I feel like every year in this category, it seems like it's going to be, all these auteurs coming in, maybe Sharon Horgan or the Broad City Girls or Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And we're always disappointed, I guess, as the Emmys go back to the more reliable wells of their favorites. So why is this year going to be different?
Well, right now I can just do some sort of wishful thinking, and eventually some of these shows that have been on for a while. You mentioned Allison Janney and Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. Their shows have been in for 5, 6, 7 seasons or so. Eventually, they do kind of lose their bloom, and I mean we see people all the time who get nominated year after year after year suddenly fall out. So I think that maybe this could be the year. At the same time, it's always hard to predict in these acting categories who's going to be in and who's going to be out because they don't have to just be 6. So theoretically, all the people who I'm predicting to get in right now could get in, as well as the 3 women who you mentioned, and maybe even another one if they all get the requisite number of votes. That's what makes this so hard to do. But I put Kristen Bell in sort of because I figure that this is the year that The Good Place is going to have the strongest showing yet. And I feel like if you're going to be voting for that in comedy series, it makes sense you'd vote for her in actress as well. Natasha Lyonne, as you said, I figure if Russian Doll's coming in, maybe she'll get in as well. Although we should say that a lot of times freshman comedy series don't always get in for their actresses. Like Ellie Kempler for the first season of Kimmy Schmidt, or Alison Brie for the first season of Glow, who I have in this year as well. Sort of banking on maybe she'll get some requisite love from being snubbed. And I do have another returning person in my lineup. I have Issa Rae for Insecure, who got in last year for the first time. The only problem I have with that, and I might take her out for this reason, is that her show is not going to be back this year. So it's going to be quite a long time since the last episodes of Insecure aired. I was back in July, I believe it was, of last year. So that could hurt her, and that could benefit somebody like Pamela Adlon, who's been in for the first 2 years of Better Things, or again, these people like Tracy Ellis Ross is another one who've been getting in the last few years.
Yeah, well, why don't you have Tracy Ellis Ross, Luca?
Because I don't think Blackish is actually going to perform that well this year. In our comedy series, drama series, Slugfest, we already talked about the fact that Blackish really hasn't performed that well with the Emmys and really hasn't won anything. It didn't get into writing or directing. I don't think it hasn't won anything. And I just feel like this is the year where it'll probably lose those few nominations that it had in the last few years. I think when we talk about Anthony Anderson, that will be a different case. But this comedy actress race is so stacked. I think even if we had 10 slots, I wouldn't know who to put in those 10 slots, which is why I have people like her dropping out. The same with Allison Janney and several other people who, in a different year would easily make this lineup.
And why don't you have Kristen Bell?
Because I'm not too sure how The Good Place will perform. I think it'll do well. I think, Ted Danson is an easy nomination in Best Actor, and the show, blew up at the Guilds. And I do think this is the year, which is why Zach's argument makes a lot of sense. But again, this race is so stacked that I just don't know, besides Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Rachel Brosnahan, who's actually safe in this lineup. I could choose anyone and feel as confident as, when I put anyone else in those other slots.
I find it hard to get a read on Kristen Bell's support. I mean, she's
Yeah,
14th in our odds, which is kind of crazy considering The Good Place is probably
yeah, that's
around
ridiculous.
5th. Ted Danson's probably around 3rd. But we do see, like at the Critics' Choice Awards this year or the Satellite Awards, where they will nominate Ted Danson and maybe even award him without nominating her.
Or
I'm not, yeah.
yeah, or at the Golden Globes where it was, Christian Bale actually got nominated. I don't think Ted Danson got nominated, right?
No.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a shaky limb to be out on, but at the same time, it's like there's no, if you're predicting that The Good Place is going to go up in nominations this year, as I am, then it makes sense that perhaps she would be a beneficiary of that. I mean, let's remember, this is somebody who's been working in television for a long time, not just in Veronica Mars, but she was in Deadwood for a little bit. So she's been around. So I mean, it might just be she might have built up enough requisite goodwill to get in, especially for a show that acclaim for has been steadily growing.
Yeah,
and
I
also,
do think. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't want to give anything away, spoiler-wise, but she has a wonderful episode in the finale that is really heartbreaking, and I think that maybe that could work in her favor. Certainly, it would be a fantastic submission if she were to get in.
Yeah. And I do think that Golden Globe nomination, even though, the Globe voters have no overlap with Emmy voters, I do think it's very telling, though, because, Globe voters usually favor new shows and new performers in new shows, and she got nominated for her 3rd season. So maybe this is the year where the show really breaks through in all categories, including comedy actress. So I think it's absolutely a possibility, and even if she's not necessarily in the top 6, we don't know. This category could have 8 nominees. So if there are 8 nominees, there's a good possibility she's at least in the top 8.
Yeah. And speaking of the Golden Globes, I can't wrap my head around how Alison Brie has been the sole nomination for Glow both seasons at the Golden Globes. And she's gotten into the combined lead and supporting category at SAG both years. And she doesn't have an Emmy nomination. And she was also never nominated in Guest for Mad Men. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And that's kind of why I have it why I have her in my predictions. I just want this madness to end.
It's a weird thing. I mean, like
strategy.
Just for statistics.
I mean, it's just this weird thing where Issa Rae is somebody who wasn't nominated for the first year for a show. Tracy Ellis Ross. I mean, there's a lot of examples. It's just it's a risky thing to predict, because like you say, I mean, there's no precedent for it. But I mean, perhaps if I think that Glow will be helped by the fact that its 3rd season would be premiering during voting. So maybe that'll help put her and maybe a couple of other people as well back into the spotlight.
And I do think a lot of people last year when she was snubbed were talking about it, which can really help a performer for the 2nd season. In which case there might, as you said, there might be enough goodwill for them to check her off this year, enough people to check her off this year. But it depends how Glow performs overall. I mean, last year's nominations were very strange. I mean, if you think about the people that were nominated and the people that weren't.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about Pamela Adlon because I feel like that show just has no buzz right now, especially compared to other auteurs who are, making a run for it now, like Phoebe Waller-Bridge for the 2nd and final season of Fleabag, or even Aidy Bryant for Shrill.
Well, Pamela...
No, go ahead.
She might get some sympathy from Louis C.K., so I think that's one thing.
I mean, Pamela Adlon, I think I was very surprised by her first nomination 2 years ago. And then last year I was considering dropping her, but then I thought if they nominated her the year before, they might just nominate her a 2nd time. But this year the competition is, so as I said many times already, there's so much competition. But I do still have her getting in, even though Better Things isn't necessarily, the most buzzed about comedy in this race. But I do think she has a lot of respect in the industry, and she is she has a lot of Emmy nominations already, but she's definitely not a lock.
I'm considering, she's, if I do drop Issa Rae from my predictions, I would consider putting Pamela Adlon in instead, because, the 3rd season of Better Things is airing right now.
Yes.
The thing is, though, like I say, it hasn't, gotten in aside from her. And I don't, the Louis C.K. aspect of it, I don't know. It didn't hurt her last year. I don't think people, find her to be guilty by association for her relationship with him. But again, I don't know. I think that she's certainly deserving, but it's just there's at least 10 people who I could see getting nominated in these theoretical 6 spots, and it's just tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I have all the old faces dropping out. I just figured that this year seems more competitive than ever.
Yes.
Ironically, that could kind of split the vote between all of them, and then just, Lily Tomlin's crowd could keep rallying them in, or maybe we'll see Ellie Kemper come back. Who I actually have in my 7th and 8th slots, I would say, are Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini for Dead to Me, which Netflix is apparently making a big push for. And it just came out, so I can't tell if it's really going to be taking off like in the next few weeks. The critics weren't totally on board for it, so there might be a little bit of resistance. Maybe it's not seen as that kind of Emmy show, but I just don't know at this point.
Yeah, I'm looking out for them. I mean, it's gotten pretty good responses from audiences that I can see, and again, Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini, those are 2 people who have been working at it for decades now. I mean, Christina Applegate going all the way back to my favorite television show as a child, Married with Children. And they're both former Emmy nominees, right? I mean, my old brain is failing me.
Linda Cardellini is just coming off of, Best Picture winner Green Book, even though she didn't have, a big role in the movie, but that will never hurt someone.
She was the heart of the movie, as they kept telling us.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you for the letter.
Oscar flashbacks. So yeah, they definitely have a possibility of getting it. It just depends on how their shows perform. I mean, the other 2, supposedly Comedy Central is mounting a big campaign for them, but we really haven't seen them break into the comedy series or drama series races. So that's a big question mark. And Dead to Me, could overperform, but I'm starting to doubt how many nominations Netflix can produce in the comedy series race, because, they might end up taking up half the category or even more.
I have to say, I'm pretty sad that Crazy Ex-Girlfriend's going to go 4 seasons and Rachel Bloom is never going to get an actress nomination. I mean, this season wasn't exactly its best, but she was consistently great in it, and the finale was wonderful. So I'm kind of, it's a little heartbreaking that she's going to go 4 years. I remember when that show first premiered, we were all expecting that she could possibly win in the first season, and now it looks like she's never going to get nominated.
Same with Gina Rodriguez for Jane the Virgin, who I know a lot of people were talking about her performance in the premiere episode, but that ship sailed a long time ago, unfortunately.
What about this? Speaking of the Golden Globe nominees, Deborah Messing got in last year for Will and Grace. I mean, is that at all, or Candice Bergen for Murphy Brown? Do you think they're going to be nostalgic at all?
I mean, Deborah Messing got in for her Me Too episode, which is still eligible this cycle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't say so.
No. I mean, I don't think if there's one thing the Emmys showed us last year is that they don't like revivals or reboots or anything, in the same vein. Yeah. I don't think anyone's actually talking about Will and Grace. It's actually not coming back until mid-season now, and there's just no buzz.
Well, there's that. I'm just like, there's so many people in our odds on this category.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Catherine O'Hara and
no buzz is what I would say most of the contenders for comedy lead actor have.
Oh my God.
I think we're all pretty set on Bill Hader coming back, Michael Douglas coming in for the first season of The Kominsky Method, and Ted Danson repeating for The Good Place. And after that, unlike in comedy lead actress, where I can make the case that, more people will get in than the number of slots there are, in this category, I can't come up with a reason why, more than like there will be more than
Like
3 or 4
three.
nominees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this category is a mess. I mean, it's a very, very barren field. I think it may be the least competitive category of of this year. Without, no shade, not trying to throw shade at anyone in that category, because there are a lot of deserving potential nominees. But after Bill Hader, Michael Douglas, and Ted Danson, I honestly could throw a dart, and I wouldn't. It could be anyone. I mean, the fact that we're talking about Jim Carrey for a Showtime show that probably won't perform well at all, or a lot of people have Don Cheadle in for Black Monday. It just shows that this category is lacking some potential nominees, some contenders.
Well, he would get in pretty. Don Cheadle would get in pretty frequently when he had that other Showtime show,
House of Lies.
House of Lies. Thanks, and I almost said House of Cards, but yeah, I mean, it's like you said. I mean, I don't hear a lot of buzz for that show, but he could just get in off of that, off of name recognition alone, and same thing with perennial nominee William H. Macy. In any other year, I would drop him, but I don't think this is, with such a barren field, I don't think this is the time to do it.
Like even with the scandal?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess so. I forgot all about that. He could use a break.
Oh my God.
But still, like I could see him get in even with that.
Yeah.
And like I don't have Anthony Anderson, but just because I think that Blackish is going to be completely forgotten this year, and he also has some of his own minor scandals. But yeah, I think he could come back.
What about Jim Parsons for the final season of The Big Bang Theory? I don't have him in. I don't think he'll get nominated, but I don't think we can count him out completely.
Like, again, it sounds ridiculous, but at this point, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have him in my predictions, but if I were to predict a 7th, I would go Jason Bateman for Arrested Development.
Oh, wow.
Like, he wasn't nominated last year for Arrested Development, but I think the category was much more competitive last year, and I think maybe he just missed. I feel like there's a lot of support for this guy. He's possibly winning for Ozark. He's getting nominated for his directing, and like he might just be somebody that they like, and in this field that might be enough. Like do people does he have more goodwill right now than say William H. Macy or Don Cheadle?
Sure. Yeah, he does.
Jim Carrey. I think probably.
What about these people like Ricky Gervais and Afterlife and Idris Elba and Turn Up Charlie? I mean, those are multiple Emmy nominees or Emmy winners. You think that they could get in there?
I think Ricky Gervais is actually a really good bet. I think he's pretty safe. I think it was easy to kind of downplay his chances at first when nobody had seen it, except for the critics, because they kind of panned the show. But I feel like we have kind of a Green Book situation here, or Bohemian Rhapsody, where the audience scores are so disproportionate with the critic scores, where it's in the IMDb top 250, and it's already has more votes on IMDb than Glow, which has been out for a couple seasons now, and it's only been out for a couple months. I feel like the response to this show is, there's a disconnect between the critics and the audiences, where it gets renewed, and he says that he's never seen a response to one of his shows like this. And that is something that, television producers would say about any of their projects, but here I kind of believe him.
Well, I'm going to put him in over William H. Macy. I'm making a change right now.
And he does get nominated for some random stuff like Derek sometimes too.
Yeah. What about, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What about Rami Youssef? I hope I'm not butchering his name, but it's the new Hulu show that is out, and I think it's starting to actually get a lot of buzz within the industry. And I saw a few of our editors I actually put him in their predictions, so I'm wondering if that show could actually surprise. And then we also have Sacha Baron Cohen, who got the Globe nomination, but again, there's no buzz. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, there was when it came out. I just wonder if, part of the reason why he got that Globe nomination was, it was right after the show came out. I wonder about him because certainly it was, talk about a out there brilliant comedic performance. I mean, just look at the number of characters he played on that show, but I don't know if it is necessarily the Emmys cup of tea. I have him in there right now just because of that Globe nomination and because of a category bereft of contenders. But I could just as easily see him not getting in favor of more of a perennial Emmy favorite.
Yeah, I think people know what his show is, and he got real people fired, so I feel like he had a bit of an impact for a time. Maybe if people aren't talking about him now. Honestly, I was surprised that he didn't get a SAG nomination for it.
Yeah.
Right. So who do you have in your top slot? Does everyone have Bill Hader, or does someone have Michael Douglas at the moment?
I have Bill Hader too, although the last 3 years I think someone different has won this category each time. So, but I don't know who the alternative would be other than either Michael Douglas or Ted Danson.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he did beat Donald Glover last year, says a lot. And Donald Glover was, a strong competitor. And depending on how the Kaminsky method does, Michael Douglas may not be as, strong a competitor as Donald Glover was last year. But he is Michael Douglas after all. So who knows? A lot of Emmy voters will check him off on name alone.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say the same thing about Ted Danson, especially if The Good Place overperforms.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll just say about Ramin Youssef, like his show does have more acclaim than most comedies that came out this year, but I just don't think anybody's seen it. We also saw Hulu just sent out their box of DVDs, except this year they're not sending DVDs, it's just a little USB stick. So I don't know if that's going to help.
Yeah, outside of Best Drama Series with The Handmaid's Tale, Hulu has really not been good at getting nominations, and I'm just waiting for them to break into any other category. I mean, The Looming Tower didn't do well either. So, yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to Comedy Supporting Actress. And like the Lead Actress category, this is another one where I think you could fill it with 10 contenders. So that's pretty exciting. I'll say that the Gold Derby odds have Alex Borstein out front, followed by Kate McKinnon, then Anna Klumsky, Betty Gilpin, Marin Hinkle, and Olivia Colman for Fleabag. I don't see Olivia Colman having a chance here at all.
No.
I think people are putting a lot of stock into her recent Oscar win, and I think a lot of it was the fact that at the beginning of the season, it looked like she could possibly win an Emmy for The Crown, but since that's been delayed, they're figuring, well, we have to transfer that Emmy love to somewhere else, and she's not being submitted for Les Miserables, and so Fleabag is the only other alternative. But I don't necessarily see that happening.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if the show had gotten a writing nomination for its first season, I would at least know that Emmy voters have seen it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think an Oscar win is gonna, you need more than just an Oscar win to get an Emmy nomination, especially in a field like Comedy Supporting Actress. I just feel like it's it's a placeholder at the moment for a lot of people. I just think it's, the afterglow of her Oscar win, but I don't see her getting in.
Now, why are we so confident in Marin Hinkle, who was snubbed last year, and the show still managed to win Comedy Series without her?
I'm not. I have her in 6th place right now. I actually might take her out and put back in Adie Bryant, or even like Laurie Metcalf for The Conners, or Megan Mullally for Will and Grace, just because like they managed to get in last year for their shows, which really got no other Emmy support whatsoever. So I think that it's basically just the fact that the category is there's a lot of people who aren't coming back, and so people feel like, okay, well, Marin Hinkle would be the beneficiary of that, but they don't always necessarily go for somebody new like that. They could just kind of fall back on their old habits.
I actually think she's getting in it. I don't feel confident about it, but I think she's going to benefit from the fact that Maisel is going to overperform in every single category. I think it's going to have that season 2 glow that a lot of shows have at the Emmys, like The Handmaid's Tale, which, you know, all of a sudden had 3 supporting actresses. I just feel like that the support for this show is strong. And a lot of people were talking about Marin Hinkle after watching the 2nd season. So I do think she has a good chance of getting nominated. She's not in like the top 3 slots for me, but I think Maisel is just, it's going to be too big to ignore.
I should clarify what I said when I said there were some open slots. There's one open slot, Zazie Beetz, out of 8 nominees last year. And all 7 others are coming back. So theoretically, this
plus
category...
Anna Klumsky.
Yeah, plus Anna Klumsky. So theoretically, this category could just be filled by everybody who got in last year. And then some. And Marin Hinkle might not even stand a chance at that. I feel like every single year I underestimate how many acting nominations Saturday Night Live is going to get. And I'm doing that again this year. I only have Kate McKinnon in. Last year they got Aidy Bryant and Leslie Jones in as well. But I just could never get a gauge on how popular a season of Saturday Night Live is going to be.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the Emmys are a bit behind. Like, I thought last season was quite a step down from the previous season, but maybe the Emmy voters were tuning into Saturday Night Live a year late. I don't know. That's pretty weird for a show that has live in its title. But I don't know how else to explain it. I really want to take Aidy Bryant out, and I did take Leslie Jones out, but I figured that Aidy Bryant has all this goodwill from Shrill right now, and anybody who's voting for her for Shrill will also vote for her here, and that'll couple with people who are voting for her in this category anyway. And I feel like that'll be enough to push her through. I actually have Marin Hinkle in 2nd place, even though she was not nominated last year, just because of the 2nd season bump for a show that did so well. It has to grow somewhere, and I'm not really sure where else to do it. And she was also the focus of the season premiere. So if voters didn't finish the 2nd season, but they came back for a little bit, then they might have discovered her. What's also tricky about the 8 nominees from last year is that means that the 6th, 7th, and 8th place nominees were all within 2% of each other. So really, if Anna Klumsky had been eligible, then all 3 of those people would have been knocked out. So being nominated last year is not really the best ground to stand on. And you can very easily be kind of leapfrogged, which has me concerned about Betty Gilpin, who was the sole nomination for her show last year in the acting categories, even though they have such an acclaimed cast that was nominated by SAG. But I think she could actually contend for the win if nominated, just because people seem to have really responded to her performance in particular from the 2nd season. Yeah,
I agree. Now I have Darcy Carden getting in for The Good Place, which I know is a risky thing, but I wonder if she could benefit not only from being on that show, but also being on Barry, which is a show that they're obviously watching, and maybe that could help her get in this year. She did have a standout episode where she was playing the multiple Janets, so maybe that'll help her as well.
Yeah, about Betty Gilpin, I don't watch Glow, but even I realized that she was attracting a lot of attention during the 2nd season. And, we don't know if she was in the first 5 spots or if she was in 6th, 7th, or 8th position last year. But the fact that she was the only nomination for the show is quite telling. And with SNL, I'm never sure how many nominations it's going to produce. At the moment, I only have 2. I have Kate McKinnon and Aidy Bryant. And as Riley already said, I have Aidy Bryant because of Shrill. But again, she could drop out as well. And then one other contender that I'm just going to mention is Molly Shannon for the other 2. Again, I don't know how it's going to perform, but it is Molly Shannon. And if, there's name check going on, she could get in.
Yeah, I feel like she's in that kind of place in her career. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised a couple of years ago she had gotten in for Divorce as sole nominee.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, and just Laurie Metcalf. I mean, Laurie Metcalf is always kind of a wild card. I mean, in 2016, she got 3 nominations, and then she got nominated last year for Roseanne after all the controversy. So she's always a possible returnee, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if she returned, especially since the controversy is it's gone now. The Conners is a new show. It was renewed. It's all fine now.
Got another Tony nomination.
Yeah. So you never know with her.
Yeah, I'm watching out for Darcy Carden, largely because of Barry. Well, not largely, but that's a factor, I guess. And also on Barry, I'm watching out for Sarah Goldberg. I want to see how she does in the finale, especially. But I feel like she has one of the most relatable characters on the whole Emmy ballot for the actors branch, where she's a struggling actor, but she's not, extremely poor. And like she is getting roles where she's playing the wife of Benicio del Toro or Patrick Fabian from Better Call Saul. Like she is getting roles. She's just not getting roles that she feels are deserving of her talent.
Mm-hmm. She's also had a pretty nice arc this year too, with all that stuff about her abusive husband, and there's little bits of drama peppered in there that are also sadly relatable to many voters. If Barry is going to grow in any areas, I think that she would certainly be one of the people to benefit from that.
Yeah. So do you guys have Alex Borstein winning, or do you think Anna Klumsky stands a chance? Because I wasn't sure how Veep was going to do, because there wasn't that much buzz surrounding this season, but the series finale was, from what I've seen, very well received. Yeah. And if Anna Klumsky is ever going to win, it has to be this year. I mean, there's no better time for her. She doesn't have to face vote splitting. She has a show in its final season, a show that has performed incredibly well at the Emmys. So this really is her chance. But Alex Borstein has a trend working in her favor, which is repeat winners in this category, which, happens a lot. And again, it's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, the show that got 8 wins last year.
Well, if Marin Hinkle does get nominated, that could help Anna Klumsky because, she could split votes with Alex Borstein. We kind of sometimes see that happen in the acting category. Sometimes we don't see it happen. But you're right. If Anna Klumsky is ever going to win, this is the time to do it. And certainly her development into sort of a Kellyanne Conway-esque character, I think, is rather amusing and timely, and could help her. I have her in second place right now. You should always, at the Emmys, bet on last year's winner to win again. But I do think that there's a possibility that Anna Klumsky could win this, especially if Veep starts to go on a roll in terms of wins.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I was contemplating dropping Anna Klumsky. But yeah, I feel like the series finale kind of secured her that slot. I just feel like if she were going to win, she would have done it by now.
That might be true, yes.
All right, so we'll move on to our final category of the day, which is Comedy Supporting Actor. In this category, I feel like everybody has the same top 4, maybe in a different order. We've got Tony Hale, who's won a couple times, Henry Winkler, who won last year, Tony Shalhoub, who just won the SAG Award, and Alan Arkin, who's in this acclaimed new show with a co-lead performance. Do we feel shaky about any of those 4 at all?
No.
They're all getting.
They're all going to get.
They're all getting. Yeah, exactly. No, they're all getting in.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind, actually.
Yeah.
Which is shocking for the Emmys.
I think, you two both have Titus Burgess, which I do not subscribe to because
I'm just hoping. Sometimes you gotta hold out hope, and he's the only thing that's been able to hold on for all 3.5 seasons of Kimmy Schmidt. He got in last year when they only got in for comedy series and him. And quite frankly, like, his is the character that has had the best arc of any of them on that show. And these last 6 or 7 episodes, however many it was. He was consistently the best part about them. So I feel like if there are any Kimmy Schmidt fans remaining in the Academy, which there must be at least some, since it got in last year, I feel like he's got to get some votes. I don't think he's going to win, which is really sad. I wish he could have at least won one time out of all these years.
He has what, like 3 Gold Derby Awards?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because we know what we're talking about here. But yeah, I mean, he can get left out easily. But again, I mean, there can be between 6 and 8, however many. We don't know what the limit is on how many acting nominees they can put in there at a given time.
I think it's +2, so I think it is 8.
Okay, 8. Yeah. So I mean, look, if they can check off as at least I know that when they're voting, they can just kind of check people off. So I don't see many people just being like, no, I'm not voting for him this year. But he might not get enough.
He's consistent, so
yeah. But he can easily be snubbed. I don't feel confident about predicting him at all. And I'm just curious to see how Veep performs in this category. If it gets 2 nominations, if it gets, 3 nominations. Right now, I just have Tony Hale getting in, but I feel like if the show really is going to overperform, especially after that well-acclaimed finale, then it's unrealistic to only have Tony Hale in there. Especially since, I think Matt Walsh has gotten in how many times? Once or twice? Twice. So, he might just take Titus Burgess' spot if, he indeed isn't like 6th place.
Yeah, I'll say about Titus Burgess. I mean, he has been nominated twice without Kimmy Schmidt herself.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the show was already running on fumes at the Emmys last year, and eventually that has to give out. Like even Ty Burrell, didn't get nominated forever for Modern Family, even though he was always giving the same performance, and he was near the start of the alphabet on half the ballots. So.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that Kimmy Schmidt's final season kind of came and went. And, I think 2 years ago he had that really acclaimed episode could have helped him win, but even then he didn't win. So it'll be very difficult for him to get the nomination this year.
Yeah. But hey, stranger things have happened. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure how Barry is going to perform in this category. I think a lot of people have started putting in at least more than one supporting actor. I think, as we said, Henry Winkler's probably a lock. But then we have Anthony Kerrigan and we have Stephen Root. And I'm not sure which one to predict at the moment, but I think Barry is going to do incredibly well. So putting one of them in my lineup seems realistic.
Stephen Root's who I have in like 7th place right now, because I think that he's had a really good arc this season with being entrapped by the police and having to sort of turn on Barry. I mean,
Feral Mongoose, I think is what he said as well.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, that episode that Bill Hader directed, where they were on like a little mini adventure, and he was with I mean, that alone would, I think, could help him get nominated. But I'm looking at him. Like you said, Matt Walsh could get back in. I've dropped him for now, but the finale made me think that he could perhaps get in just because of the way that his character develops into this kind of goofy CNN anchor. I have another bit of wishful thinking in my 6th place. I have Marc Maron for Glow, because I think that, like Alison Brie, his snub last year was really talked about, and that might help him. That might help generate some votes for him in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see how Glow performs, and if it gets those acting nominations that it didn't get last year. And I'm just curious to see if SNL can get any nominations, if Kenan Thompson's going to get in, or Alec Baldwin.
Yeah. And they're still submitting him in supporting, even though he is eligible.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know why, like, I guess I have to put Alec Baldwin in there. I took him out last year and he still got in.
So. I think people are over it, to be honest. I don't, even though it's Emmy voters, so I'm not going to put anything past them. They might just check him off because they've, nominated him so many times now. We've seen it time and again, and maybe putting in all these new people is a mistake. I have no idea.
I mean, it's tricky how with SNL, I want to predict it for kind of less than we expected. But with Kenan Thompson, I feel like it took him forever to get nominated.
Yeah.
And they even had him, even if it was Lorne Michaels, they had him present Best Drama Series last award of the night last year, which I thought kind of spoke to his stature. So it'd be weird for, them to make him kind of wait so long and then just take it away immediately. But I don't know, that is how the Emmys work sometimes. Sometimes people just cruise to several nominations just because they're in the right place at the right time, and other times they have to really work for it. You were talking about Veep and Barry, and I started with Matt Walsh in my predictions because he just seems kind of like a perennial nominee at this point. But then he had very little to do, and I thought, if people are watching this, how could they vote for him over Timothy Simons? But then Timothy Simons kind of faded over the season, and I actually put in Anthony Carrigan because I figured that Barry has to go up in nominations, just like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And if they're watching the show, he's kind of the most comedic part of it, and he's such a standout kind of breakthrough performance. But as the season went along, again, I shifted because Stephen Root had that big episode. And I also, went to Stephen Root's IMDb page and saw that he has, I think, 237 credits.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he has worked with everyone. He's still doing random voice work in children's shows, but he's also been in Best Pictures, and he's and he has an iconic role from Office Space that kind of has attained him some cult status. So I feel like he's kind of in the Matt Walsh position where he's kind of worked with a lot of people, and he's on this buzz-about show that the Emmys love. So I feel like he's in the right place. So I've got him and Kenan Thompson in my last two slots, but I would not be surprised to see either Barry or Veep gain 3 nominations, just kind of occupying those last 2 slots in addition to the 4 that we all consider locked.
Now, this is, we talk about Maisel gaining in nominations, but this is one category where I don't see them being able to, aside from, I was going to say compete, but then I remember Tony Shalhoub is in there. But I don't think that they'll bring in anybody aside from him, like Kevin Pollak or Michael Zegan. I think that's pretty much, it's Shalhoub and nobody else. Now, if Barry and Veep do end up getting like multiple nominees, do you think that helps somebody like Shalhoub win since he just won the SAG award, or maybe Alan Arkin?
Absolutely. I think his SAG win, that was also, he benefited from vote splitting. So, and, again, Maisel will be a huge force for its second season. I think that will easily help. And even if, they don't, even if, Barry doesn't get more than 1 nomination, I still think Tony Shalhoub is competitive for the win, just because of the overall support for the show and, his SAG win. I think the 4 slots, the 4 people that we all have in, it's a very tight race between all of them. I wouldn't be surprised if any one of them won, to be honest. I don't know about Henry Winkler repeating, but except for that, I could see Alan Arkin win. I could see Tony Shalhoub win. I could see Tony Hale win if Veep, goes on a steamroll.
Veep sweep.
Yeah, Veep sweep. Yeah.
I wish we could just pick 8 people in this category because it would really save me a lot of trouble.
It's just so strange that all the comedy categories are so stacked, except for comedy actor. They need more contenders and the others need less contenders, honestly.
Yeah.
We didn't mention Hugh Laurie. He's another Veep guy who could get in.
Had a good finale. Some Emmy people, Ed Asner in Dead to Me. It's got multiple Emmy wins. Maybe he can benefit from if that show does well. I'm just looking through the list here to see if there's anybody who we didn't. William
could get in. Actually, I would not be entirely surprised. I'm never going to predict him, but I think it's within the realm of possibility.
What about William Jackson Harper?
I was going to say.
or
That would be surprising.
or maybe Andre Braugher in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, since that show was snatched from the jaws of defeat and is now airing again. I don't know.
I mean, Andre Braugher, he's one of those guys who I could see kind of come in and out of the category randomly.
Yeah.
Maybe for the final season. I mean, that's always a possibility as well. But, Brooklyn Nine-Nine has been such a non-factor at the Emmys. I mean, got in Sterling K. Brown last year. That is something, I guess.
It'll get another guest nomination this year for Lin-Manuel Miranda as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks for joining us, viewers. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and also go to goldderby.com to log your Emmy predictions.